He's saying this morning, following some positive health indicators, also provincial guidance, it is rescinding its state of emergency declaration. That declaration is put back into place. It was back in March of 25th of 2020 that was put into place. Mayor Catherine McGarry says we know collectively that we are now turning a corner. City News Time, 10:01, over to the traffic center. The very latest now with Eva Franciscatos.
Good morning. If you are eastbound on the 401, so far a pretty decent commute. We've got some light rain happening right now, so just be careful. Drive according to the changing weather conditions. East 401 from Cambridge towards Milton looks great, and then delays as you make your way east of Winston Churchill to east of Mississauga Road. Westbound on the 401, not much happening through there. It looks pretty good as you make your way from Cambridge towards the Woodstock area. 7-8 through New Hamburg, through Kitchener-Waterloo, also in great shape right now. Highway 7 towards the Guelph area, also not spotting any delays or problems. We've got ongoing construction on King Street in both directions between Central and Necker in Waterloo. It's shut down. That's for long-term construction. No delay as you approach that construction zone. And Victoria Street between Margaret and Weber. It's a single lane through there. That's all for road work. Now with the check on the forecast, here's City News weather specialist John Wilson.
4 degrees today comes with a chance of a shower or fog patch. Not too much moisture left to be had out of this big low. It is still full of cloud, though. Tomorrow, flurries start to come in from a northwest wind behind the low, 0. And tomorrow, a lake breeze with flurries, 3 degrees. Sunday, a bitter north wind with flurries at only -5 and -3 on Monday. Today's high 4.
And right now it is overcast 1 degree. NATO's Secretary General says he hopes China doesn't aid Russia as Moscow invades Ukraine. Tom Rivers has more this morning.
With Russia facing increasing international isolation, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg warns Beijing against coming to Moscow's rescue.
China must not provide economic or military support for the Russian invasion. And the message is that we have to stand united.
China's criticized NATO for what it sees as ignoring Russian security concerns before the actual invasion. And it said it will purchase much of Russia's wheat, which now won't be heading to the West. Tom Rivers, ABC News at the Foreign Desk.
Well, if you look up, you might see some local vintage planes now wearing the colors of Ukraine. The Waterloo Warbird saying this morning it is changing the markings of 2 of its aircraft, leaving the Russian markings behind in support of Ukraine and Poland to recognize what's happening in Ukraine over the last month. The owner of the 2 jets saying this is the right thing to do at this critical moment in time. The Oscars getting handed out Sunday night. Which film has the best shot at taking top prize?
The momentum has been swinging back and forth all award season between The Power of the Dog,
Go on, let him out,
and Coda.
I've never done anything without my family before.
And in the closing weeks, Apple TV Plus's Coda, which stands for Children of Deaf Adults, has pulled ahead. It won 3 of the top Guild Awards, including the strongest Oscars Best Picture predictor, the Producers Guild Award. Netflix's The Power of the Dog has the most nominations, but far fewer major wins. Still, surprises can happen, and if either film wins, it'll be the first Best Picture winner from a streaming service. Jason Nathanson, ABC News, Hollywood.
Rangers and Storm meeting in Guelph tonight. The Rangers coming off a loss in Windsor. City News 570 has the game starting with the pregame at 7. City News 570 is CKGL AM Kitchener. You can listen 3, 4, 5 times a day. Always be in the know and find out how to hear us on your smart speaker at kitchener.citynews.ca. You can download the City News 570 app at kitchener.citynews.ca. News next at 10:30. I'm Lisa Drew, City News.
If knowledge is power, consider this show your Sword of Grayskull. Welcome to the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570.
Welcome back to the Mike Farwell Show here on City News 570, and welcome in to our viewers now joining us on Rogers TV, Channel 20. Well, if you're up on Sunday evening, you may want to check out a new documentary which is going to premiere on City TV this Sunday night at 10 p.m. It's called Veracity, Breaking Brethren. And the brief description goes like this. 5 former members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church come forward to tell the story of how the sex extreme fundamentalist practices divides families and leaves countless lives shattered. Alex McIntosh is director and writer of the documentary and joins us now. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hi there. How you doing?
Good. Now, did I pronounce that right? It's Veracity? It's not Veracity, is it?
Yeah, no, it's Veracity.
Veracity, okay. Now, this is just the latest, I think, in the latest of a series of Veracity documentaries. I've seen a few others, right?
Yeah, I'm the series producer on Veracity. It's been running for 2 seasons now, and it's sort of City News, City TV's documentary strand. And this is sort of our latest episode.
So where did the title for this come from, Breaking Brethren?
Well, it came from, I sort of found the story myself. It's kind of sort of a bit of a take on Breaking Bad, but it's really about the idea of how hard it is for people who are within this church to leave because of the way they behave and the way the church sort of, or the way the belief system indoctrinates people to stay.
Now, is this just one individual church, or is this like a group of churches?
There are about 50,000 members worldwide. They're predominantly in Commonwealth countries, so it started in the UK, but they have meeting. They call them meeting halls. So basically, kind of groups here in Canada, the US, Australia, New Zealand, and then sort of pockets of sort of elsewhere around the world. But it's not a big group.
But I guess it's a certain sect within the church.
Yeah, so it broke away from kind of Protestant Christianity in the sort of early to mid 19th century, and it broke away as the Brethren. And then there were sort of over the course of the last 150 years, it's broken up more and more to become this specific group is called the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, and it's also sort of formally called, and sort of the sort of handle that the ex-members give it is called the Exclusive Brethren, because they believe themselves to be the most exclusive group of Christians on the planet, essentially.
So what we've uncovered in this documentary, would you consider what's happening here to be a cult?
That's a kind of an interesting question. The short answer is that one of the things I sort of did at the beginning was talk to people who are sort of experts in cults, and one of the challenges is, there's a dictionary definition, but there is no real kind of, this is, what defines what is or isn't a cult. So we've been very careful not to call it that, and we sort of left it. The whole film is interviews with the people who have sort of left, and we've kind of left it to them to describe how they feel about what the church is, and then for the viewers to decide for themselves what they think it is.
So why do people get drawn into things like this?
Well, in this particular, the curious thing about this, and what drew me to the story is, unlike most other groups, let's say, you have to be born into this church. It doesn't attract. They don't want other people to join because of their nature is they believe they are the closest to God, and they will have the closest seat in heaven once they all reach heaven. And so, unlike other groups where you are allowed to be, part of their kind of selling thing is to attract people in. In this case, they don't want people to join, which made it sort of somewhat unique compared to other groups that kind of have these kind of rules. They have a very, very strict system of rules that feel very reflective of other groups that you might want to sort of put in that category.
So they're in it from childhood, basically.
Yeah, they're born into it. So, most of the families that we spoke to, or the people we spoke to, can trace their lineage in the group back to almost the beginning, like 6 or 7 generations of this.
Because I guess if people are brought in after the fact, you're able to kind of make comparisons between the outside world and the church, and you might quickly realize, okay, something's not right here.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Because a lot of the people the flip side of that is that when people leave, when people leave this church, it's like they are children, even no matter how old they are. So they have no understanding of how the outside world really works, and their lives are often very difficult as a result, and they kind of spiral down. It's very hard. And one of the points the film makes is that the church sort of point to those people who are really struggling and had hard lives as to why you shouldn't leave. But really, the problem is that the way they're treated means they either feel they have no choice to leave or just really want to get out. And then when they get out, they are faced with a world that they do not understand.
Right. So why is it so difficult to leave? Like what does the church do to try and keep people in there?
Well, the big kind of tenet of the church's philosophy in terms of leaving is if you leave, you will go to hell. Mm-hmm. And they are taught to believe that everything outside of the church is essentially bad. So that, in terms of rules, no TV, no radio, no magazines, no interactions with socially other people who aren't part of the church. You can't share a wall with another house who's the person living next door is not not a brethren member. You can't go on holidays or go into hotels or anything like that without sort of permission if you're going there for business purposes. It's a very strict lifestyle, and it's all with a view to, because all those things are bad, and if you do any of those things, you're going to go to hell. So if you were brought up in that system, you believe that if you leave, you're going to go to hell, and so that's what makes leaving incredibly difficult. No matter how challenging your life is in the church, that's the hurdle people have to overcome, is the fear of the unknown of what's out there if you do leave.
So with very little contact with the outside world, how do people first come to realize that, okay, this doesn't seem right?
I think lots of different ways. I think that the one of the things that happens is that if you for example, commit some kind of sin, then and people are the people in the film that we spoke to naturally come forward and confess these sins because they feel like that's what they should do. Mm-hmm. There's a process by which you are sort of isolated. It's called being shut up. And then you're sort of isolated from you can be isolated from your family, you can be isolated from the rest of the community, because your sin isn't supposed to pollute the people who are still part of the church. And so, in the film we speak to people who are literally living in the same household as people they're not supposed to speak to because they've been shut up. And they can't speak to anyone else in the church, and they can't speak to anyone else who's not part of the church. You're basically kind of, the way that they described it, it's kind of how we're living now in terms of like you're living in isolation, except you're living with your family. And that's a very strange and stressful situation, I imagine, that people to be in. And it's that kind of behavior that just forces some people to question whether this is right or wrong. And then it just kind of, as soon as you start to question it, it's going to spiral from there.
So, Alex, how did you first come to discover this story?
Well, there was very innocuously, there was a news story out of BC about a school crossing guard who refused to join the local union on religious grounds. Mm-hmm. And it was it didn't make any sense to me. And when I looked it up, I discovered that one of the rules is children can only go to a brethren school. And so this crossing guard was a brethren member who, based on his belief system, was not allowed to join the local union. And the local union went, well, you've got to. And it sort of spiraled from there, and I started to meet people who were part of the church, formerly part of the church, and hear their stories about the way in which they've been, in leaving, a lot of them haven't seen their family members ever again in some cases. I'll have and by family members, I mean husbands, wives, sons, daughters, parents. If you leave, you're supposed to have no contact with the people who are part of the church, because they are led to believe that person has gone to hell, so they should have no contact with them. And so the big sort of talking point in the film essentially is the way in which this belief system divides families. And we spoke to, and everyone in the film who was left, and people we spoke to who were not part of the film but for whatever reason didn't take part, they've all experienced this, of having this extreme separation from very close nuclear family members.
Is this still happening, or has this documentary blown the whistle on the whole thing? Is it still around?
It's still happening. It happens all the time. We spoke to someone in the UK who's one of her things in life is to help people who are going through this transition into the outside world, essentially. And a lot of these people are young teenagers, 20-year-olds, not just sort of older family members. It's what I would say is this is a story that hasn't been covered very much in Canada. because there are groups here in Canada in Toronto, Hamilton, Vancouver, Montreal, and various other places as well. But no one's really looked at this. There's been one or two things done about it, but no one's really looked at it with this level and with this many people coming forward to talk about it. There's been a lot of coverage in New Zealand and Australia because Australia is where the headquarters is. So naturally, there's more coverage of their behaviour there. But this is kind of one of the first times we've sort of thrown a spotlight on it in Canada.
Are there other churches in Canada doing this as well? Or maybe we don't even know that at this point?
I think that's exactly one of the. I mean, it's sort of in the DNA of the film is, these are people who they don't live in some compound in rural Manitoba or a foreign country. These people, with the exception of, they can't have a adjoining wall. They are your neighbours, and they live in urban areas, and they don't dress particularly differently, and they drive cars. So you might not know, if there's a group next to in your community, you might not even know it that these people are there. So I think the answer is almost certainly yes. There is. This is just one of probably many faith-based groups that behave like this in terms of a very strict set of rules and a very indoctrinated approach to what happens if you leave.
Are there any other Veracity documentaries coming up? What are we working on?
Yeah, so next month, the next one coming up is essentially the 30th anniversary of the Yonge Street uprising, which was a race-based. You shouldn't really call it a riot, but it was a giant sort of big fight, I guess, that sort of tied into the Rodney King story.
Right.
And this year is the 30th anniversary of that, so. And City News has a fabulous amount of archive that covered that event, so that's the next film that's coming out. And then after that, we have another one about essentially sort of racism in healthcare and the ways in which sort of institutional racism affects people across Canada in the way they receive their healthcare. So we've got 2 more left this season, and then we are now starting on research and planning for the 3rd season.
That's great. This sounds really interesting, Alex. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks very much.
Alex McIntosh is director and writer of Breaking Brethren. It's a documentary which will premiere on City TV this Sunday evening at 10 p.m. 5 former members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church come forward to tell the story of how the sex-extreme fundamentalist practices divides families and leaves countless lives shattered. Sounds interesting. This Sunday night at 10 p.m. on City News. Check your local listings, as they say. This is the Mike Farwell Show. Producer Paulie filling in today on City News 570.
It's a give and take. Mike gives you a chance to call, and we get to hear your take. Call 519-570-2545 or 1-800-570-5715. More of the Mike Farwell Show after this. local boy who dreamt of making Waterloo region a better place. It's still a work in progress. This is the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570.
I sort of found the story myself. It's really about the idea of how hard it is for people who are within this church to leave because of the way they behave and the way the church sort of, or the way the belief system indoctrinates people to stay.
Alex McIntosh joining us just a few moments ago. He's director and writer of a documentary that's going to be on City TV this Sunday night, Veracity, Breaking Brethren. 5 former members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church come forward to tell the story of how the sect's extreme fundamentalist practices divides families and leave countless lives shattered. It sounds, because when you think of cults, if this is a cult, again, they Alex was saying that they don't exactly refer to it as that in the film. Make up your own decision, although some of the people they interview in the film do refer to it as such. I always had the impression this was something that you see more in the United States. The most famous cult was Jim Jones. I think that was his name, the whole Jonestown incident back in the 70s or 80s. But it's happening up here in Canada, as this documentary suggests. To the phones. Jim, go ahead.
Morning, Paulie. You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
I'd like to mention the Orthodox horse and buggy Mennonite in our area do practice what they call shunning, where if you leave the church, you're person non grata sort of thing. You're not allowed to, the church members essentially, as they say, shun you. They're not allowed to communicate with you or visit with you. And I've heard of it going so far as that even when your parents pass away, you're not allowed to go to the funerals.
Yeah, I've heard that too, yeah.
So it's not a cult. It's an interpretation, their interpretation of the Christian Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I think the word cult has to be used in certain ways, like I do with the gentleman that you mentioned. But it'd be interesting if you wanted to do a show on it. The Conrad Grebel College would be the people to talk to for the practices of the Mennonites in our area.
All right.
It's right here. It's all those people that people love taking pictures of in our region have some of the same practices within some of the sects of the Mennonite faith. Thanks, Paulie.
All right, cool. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, and I think there's even been a couple of TV shows, United States-based TV shows that follow people who have left the Mennonite or whatever. And I've seen a little bit of it. It is a little interesting. We have George on the line. Go ahead.
Yeah, Paul, long time no talk. George from Cambridge.
Yeah, I was wondering the other day. That's so funny. I was wondering where you've been. Yeah.
Around, just not calling it as much.
Yeah.
This caller was right. The Amish men, I see a lot of similarities. But, Paul, the reason I'm calling in, I'm from Cambridge. I know a few families in Cambridge who are Plymouth, sometimes called closed brethren. And it's really sad from the stories you're hearing. People who leave and are discommunicated or are harassed to come back. I've heard even that sometimes, where they're being harassed to come back. They're leaving the true faith. So it's a really sad situation.
So you've actually known people who have left this?
I won't mention the family names, of course.
Right,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, but I do know there's a few, there's a branch down in Cambridge, and I don't even know where their location is. That's how hidden, that's how close they are. Like, I can't even tell you where their church would be.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not really looking for people to walk in on Sunday morning and, check it out, worship with the believers. But, no, you can't even do that.
Great. Thanks for the call, George. Yeah, this documentary really does sound interesting. And I am going to try and get a chance to watch it. And if I don't watch it live, which, quite frankly, I'm usually in bed by 10 p.m., I'll tell you. But certainly I will PVR it and watch it on Monday for sure. It's called Veracity, Breaking Brethren. It appears on City TV this Sunday night at 10 p.m. 5 former members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church come forward to tell the story of how the sect's extreme fundamentalist practices divides families and leaves countless lives shattered. Now, this is happening in Canada, and I think this documentary focuses on the Canadian element, but this is a certain sect of religion, and it's all over the world. There are thousands of members all over the world who are in this. So really interesting stuff. We have to go to the news. Coming up next, our weekly chat on the Coaches Show with Mike McKenzie, head coach and general manager of the Kitchener Rangers. That's coming up next here on the Mike Farwell Show. Producer Paulie filling in on City News 570.
Compelling, noteworthy, and entertaining. The Mike Farwell Show checks all the boxes. Hang tight. More local talk coming up next on City News 570. Region's #1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is City News 570 everywhere.
Good morning. 10:30 overcast and 1 degree. I'm Lisa Drew with the City News 570 top story. A sign of better times ahead. Cambridge no longer under that state of emergency. It says it's rescinding the declaration after 2 pandemic years, citing what it calls some positive health indicators, also provincial guidance. The cities of Waterloo and Kitchener also ending their states of emergency today. Ukrainian authorities in the besieged ruins of Mariupol now saying about 300 people died when a Russian airstrike blew up a theater there last week. That's where hundreds of civilians were sheltering. President Zelensky calling on his citizens to keep up their resistance to Russia's invading forces. Toronto's Hospital for Sick Children saying 3 more pediatric cancer patients from Ukraine have now arrived for treatment. They arrived on Wednesday and are getting settled. The hospital says it's now caring for a total of 5 cancer patients from Ukraine and could still accept more. And a group of students at the University of Waterloo leading the charge today at a local rally fighting against those who stand for profit, adding to the global climate crisis. That rally in Uptown Waterloo, part of the global climate strike, gets underway at noon in Waterloo Town Square, led by fossil-free UW. Traffic note, if you're on the 401, eastbound 401, just before the Cambridge Service Center, Star 401 caller saying, watch out for some tire debris in the middle lane. It says drivers are hitting the brakes. You can follow City News 570 on Twitter at City News KIT. News next at 11. I'm Lisa Drew, City News.
He's driving the motorcycle, and we're just sitting in the sidecar, along for the ride. We return to the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570.
When you hear that music, it means one of two things. It means the Rangers have scored at the odd on a Friday night, or it's Friday morning at 10:30, and it's time for the Kitchener Rangers Coaches Show with Mike McKenzie. By the way, producer Paulie filling in today. Mike Farwell still not feeling great. Hopefully he'll be back on Monday. So yeah, Mike McKenzie, head coach and general manager of the Kitchener Rangers, joins us for the weekly Coaches Show. Mike, how you doing?
Good, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start with the top prospects game that was at the odd the other night. How did you enjoy the experience of being behind the bench for that top prospects game? And then take me through the whole experience on Wednesday of being able to share it with your coaching staff.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was it's one of those things where you kind of track and follow, in other years, even when it's not in Kitchener, and it's a pretty cool event. So to have it in Kitchener was pretty cool. We obviously got to be involved and be a big part of it, and I thought the atmosphere in the crowd was great. CHL ran a great event. It was cool to have a lot of people kind of filtering through our building and getting to meet a lot of different people and a lot of different kids and the top CHL players and in all three leagues. So yeah, it was fun to be a part of, and I thought the building was packed and great atmosphere. So yeah, overall it was a exciting couple of days for our organization and for me as well being a part of it.
Now, this question from our reporter, Mark Perry. He says there were a few GMs in the stands on Wednesday night and some NHL GMs as well. Perhaps some scouting on their part or watching their players on the ice. I'm curious as to what the GM mindset is of having one of those conversations with one of those top prospects, and maybe that they're kind of hey, this kid is not too bad, or hey, this kid is coachable, and how far a day like Wednesday goes to say, in a year or two, and maybe thinking about picking a player up at the deadline to make a stretch run if they're in a position to do so.
Yeah, I saw there was, obviously I would think that all 32 NHL teams were well represented there, and I know there were a lot of general managers in attendance. So it's one of those games where, teams circle it on the calendar, and it's a chance for not just the area scouts to come out, but for some of the higher ups to come out, and general managers and assistant general managers to come get a look at these guys. And while it's just one game on the schedule, it's still important. So I think it goes both ways for the kids playing in the game. Is you can really make a good impression because there's lots of important eyes watching you, but at the end of the day, it's also still just one game. So I'm sure they won't read too much into it. But again, when you have that many important decision makers from the NHL, it's obviously a game you want to perform well in and do well in.
So watching what Shane Wright was able to do, maybe it's not such a bad thing that you're not playing in the Eastern Conference this year, so you have to face him?
Yeah, that's one of the perks for not playing the Eastern Conference teams this year. He's a hell of a player, and we saw that in the game. He's one of those guys, when he's on the ice, you notice him right away with the speed and the skill, and off the ice, complete package in terms of leadership and maturity for a kid that age, to have that kind of maturity and have his head screwed on that straight is really impressive. So he's obviously a special player on and off the ice, and it was pretty cool to get to coach a team with him on it. And like you said, thankful we're not having to play Kingston this year and avoid having to go head to head against him.
Now on Tuesday night, it looked like you were going to come out with at least a point. Do you think you deserved a better fate?
Yeah, I would say so. I think overall, looking at our game, I liked the way we played. I thought we had pretty good energy, and it was one of those games where it was high scoring, but it was back and forth, and it felt like it had overtime written all over it. And then one little mistake, and it's in the back of our net with 4 minutes left, and it's obviously a tough break. But no, it definitely could have gone either way. And I mean, the disallowed goal that we had was a pretty key turning point too. And so there was a lot of little things that happened throughout the game that didn't really break for us, that if they did, maybe we're on the other side of it and maybe we get a point or 2 points, even get it to overtime or a shootout. So, but overall, there's a lot of positives, I thought. And, we were pretty happy with how we guys played and responded when we were down a couple goals too.
So, of course, all Ranger fans are wondering about the status of Reed Vlad. Is he ready to come back tonight or at least some point this weekend?
Yeah, he's ready to go tonight. So that's a big boost for our lineup. We've obviously missed him for the last couple of weeks, and he brings that speed and energy, and he's a big part of our team, so we're happy to have him back tonight.
Are you going to put him back in the same spot that he was in the lineup with Joseph Sepra and Mike Petizian?
Well, he's going to go back with Joseph and play on the wing with Joseph, but we're going to probably move Mitchell Martin up with Mike Petizian and Francesco Pinelli, and then that will leave Reed with Joseph, and we'll probably keep Andrew LeBlanc on the wing there with Reed and Joseph. He's been pretty hot as of late, and he's starting to get some goals and get some confidence, so that should be a dangerous line, especially with Reed back now.
So we have a big weekend coming up, 3 games against 3 really good teams. Are you worrying about how you're going to manage minutes over those games?
Not right now. I think right now we're just focused on tonight, and we'll just take it a game at a time. It's obviously 3-3s are tough in any case, but when you've got Guelph on the road, London on the road, and then Flint, who's one of the top teams at home, 3 games in 2.5 days, it's obviously a pretty crazy schedule, and the quality of teams is right up there. So we know it's a good challenge for us, but right now we're just focused on Guelph and trying to get 2 points today against Guelph, and we'll just kind of take it day by day after we see how tonight's going and move on to Saturday after tonight. So just focus strictly on Guelph for now.
Now, of course, Guelph was at the odd last Friday night at that exciting 3-2 come-from-behind win over the Storm. Do you think the Storm are going to be looking for revenge tonight in their barn?
Yeah, I'm sure they will be. It was a close game. We always seem to have pretty good games against Guelph back and forth, and it's obviously a bit of a rivalry with the proximity of the teams, and I'm sure there'll be lots of Ranger fans over at the Sleeman Center tonight, and it's always got that kind of playoff feel to it when you get Guelph and Kitchener, especially on a Friday night. So yeah, I'm sure they'll be ready for us, and their staff will have them ready to play. So we're gonna have to be ready right from the drop of the puck.
Mike, thanks a lot for your weekly chat with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Mike McKenzie, of course, head coach and general manager of the Kitchener Rangers. A rare Friday night game that's not at home, a rare Friday night road game for the Rangers, but they haven't gone too far. They're playing Guelph tonight at the Sleeman Center. So, of course, really easy for Ranger fans just to drive down Highway 7 and catch some Rangers action at the Sleeman Center. I was just checking, and there are still a handful of tickets available, and I do mean a handful of tickets available for tonight at the Sleeman Center. I'm looking at my screen here. Most sections have fewer than 10 tickets left in the entire section. I haven't clicked. Let's click this one here at the end zone. Are there even any 2 together? Yeah, there's 3 together right there. But, there's only a handful of tickets left and even a fewer handful of tickets that would be together. So, again, Kitchener Rangers in Guelph tonight at the Sleeman Center. This is the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570. Producer Paulie filling in.
You've got something to say. Now it's time to say it on the Mike Farwell Show. Call 519-570-2545 or 1-800-570-5715.
This...
he's got a hot take. This is the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570. Simulcast on Rogers TV, Cable 20.
It's the half hour of hockey here on the Mike Farwell Show. We just got finished talking to Mike McKenzie about the Kitchener Rangers game this evening. Well, there's also other hockey teams in town. Of course, we have the KW Siskins. They're just wrapping up their season. And there's a unique promotion happening at this Sunday's game. And here to tell us all about it is Curtis Claremont. He's Director of Hockey Operations for the KW Siskins. Curtis, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, as always. I appreciate it.
So what's happening this Sunday?
Well, we are going to be allowing all fans who want to come to the game to come, and at no charge. Normally, there's a ticket fee as part of coming to watch our games at the rec center. We are waiving all our ticket fees for a donation at the door for the Ukrainian Refugee Relief Fund. This Sunday 1:30's game. It's the last regular season game before the playoffs.
And is there a minimum donation?
No. I mean, at the end of the day, we met as a board. I mean, the whole thing actually came together quite quickly as an idea and a concept. It's kind of funny how it materialized in the way it came. But that was one of the questions. And no, I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to people how much they want to donate. I mean, normally, tickets are $10 for the game. People can put whatever the money in they want. 100% of whatever is collected will go to the fund. We will actually tweet out Sunday night, how much money was raised. I mean, we'd like to raise as much as we can and hope that the community at large comes out and watches a great hockey game. We have a very good team. We're battling for first place right now, but also to in some small way, try and help this cause.
So I guess with everything happening in Ukraine these days, I suppose this was a pretty easy decision to put on a promotion like this.
Yeah, I mean, you're watching the world sort of this all unfold on television, right? We're insulated from it 5,000 miles away, and it seems unreal because it's on television, but it is real. And it's kind of funny. I was at a practice Wednesday. I don't miss many practices, and we have a player who's from Poland, and he had put a Polish flag on his helmet just to show his pride for his country, and that's what sort of stimulated the thought process. I thought, well, with all that's going on, maybe in some small way, we could do something to show some support. So that had me thinking originally about us getting, small Ukrainian flags and putting them on our helmets. As a show of support, as this big global game of risk is going on, as this poor country and these people are vehicles as part of this war. They're drawn into it. They didn't get to pick, So first I thought of just doing the flags, and then they thought, maybe we could do more. So we met as a board of directors, and we came up with the idea. We'd also heard on television that there was a Canadian component to this, or a refugee fund that was being driven in Canada. So that all manifested itself into the idea of using our team in the last regular season game to create some support, financial support, because that's kind of what we've heard. They need money, they need funds to help them through this very difficult time.
Do you have a specific fundraising goal in mind?
Well, I had one yesterday, but it's higher now, only because I want it to be higher. $5,000. I think if we could raise $5,000 or more, that would be great. And and it's still small in the big things, but I think I would feel good if we were able to raise that much money.
Now, I go to Siskins games quite often now. Do people have to go to the box office, or do they just walk right in up the stairs and make the donation there?
So there's going to be a plexiglass box, and it'll be just out, and just put your money in there. They can go to the box office. The box office is going to direct people upstairs.
Okay.
To to where we normally have our people collect the tickets. And we're also there's going to be some bumper stickers that we've had created and some helmet stickers that, while supplies last, if people feel compelled that they would like to do that. And we had a local company, one of our vendors actually at no charge have created these bumper stickers and these flags to, again, show some support for what these poor people are going through.
It's a great idea what you're doing this Sunday. Now that I have you on the phone, though, I want to ask you. Of course, this season, or I guess last season, the Waterloo Siskins were rebranded as the KW Siskins. How has the response been?
The response has been sort of mixed. Mm-hmm. We certainly had the long-standing people who were ex-Siskins who don't necessarily know sort of why we rebranded. It's all about sustainability. Running a non-for-profit junior hockey team, people generally have no idea how much it costs. We're spending over $200,000 a year to create opportunity for these young people to develop as hockey players and as people. And that money comes from somewhere, has to come from somewhere. So, our over the years, it's been, it's always been a challenge to try and get local community support from companies and from individuals, and we're blessed with a great sponsorship group of people who help support us. But it's an ongoing process of sustainability. So the concept was, there was an opportunity with the Dutchman moving to Ayr that we could hopefully over time assume more of the Kitchener fan base as our fan base over time. So it's been mixed. We have had some sponsors come forward from the Kitchener market, and I hope over time that will grow. And I would say that there have been a few that have come forward most recently for next year, specifically because it's taken people time to get used to the idea of our expansion, of hopefully Kitchener and Waterloo people seeing us as their junior B hockey team. It's an incredible level of hockey. These guys were on the ice every day. They work very hard, and it's all about sustainability of the organization over time. I think we're in our 88th year of operation. So that was what was behind it, and it's going okay. We've gotten, like we said initially, we had some people that were shocked with it. We went through both mayors of both cities and sort of ran it through our existing sponsorship base to see how they feel. So we did some diligence originally, and felt as an organization that for the long-term vested interest of the Siskins, it was the right thing to do.
And so you get the playoff run coming up. How are you feeling about that?
I'm feeling confident but nervous, not overconfident. Mm-hmm. There are really good teams in this league, and a good example is a week ago Friday. We went into Listowel. They're way down below us in the standings, quite a few points, and we're down 3-0 in the first 10 minutes. So many good teams. You certainly can't be overconfident in any 1 minute or any one game, which is part of what makes the Midwest Conference of the GOJHL so great as a great development place. I know we're one of the go-to places for the OHL to place their players for development, because you've got to compete every game, and that's part of the personal development of a hockey player is being prepared to preparing yourself to play every game, to compete every game, to compete every shift. And while we're not the OHL, we're sort of a nurturing segue to that type of mentality, whether it be the NCAA Division I or to the OHL or to CIS. It's about competition. So it's a long answer to your question. So I like my team. We have a good team. There's some other really good teams in the conference. So it's going to be a dogfight.
Curtis, thanks a lot for joining us this morning, and good luck in the playoffs, and good luck on Sunday with this fundraiser.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Curtis Claremont is Director of Hockey Operations for the KW Siskins, no longer the Waterloo Siskins, but the KW Siskins. And so, yes, this Sunday at 1:30 is their last home game of the year. Actually, I think it's their last game of the regular season period, and they're running a fundraiser. There's no price for tickets. However, you can get in if you make a donation to a Ukrainian relief fund, and they're going to send all of that money, 100% of the proceeds raised on Sunday, going to Ukraine. And very cool thing that they're doing. And the KW Siskins, I've said I'm not a huge hockey fan, but I do enjoy going to Siskins games. I love that arena, and the team is really good. And I told my son that if I ever were to have season's tickets for any, the Blue Jays would be number one, but that I don't think I can afford Blue Jays season's tickets at this point. But if I were to have season's tickets for any sort of local sports team, the KW Siskins would be it for sure. I absolutely love going to games, and maybe I will go to the game this Sunday. We'll see. So yeah, this Sunday, 1:30 at the Waterloo Memorial Recreation Complex. You can get into the game for a simple donation to Ukraine. I was about to go to the phone, and our caller disappeared. I guess I was talking too much. So, it's a talk show. I'm sorry. Also happening this weekend is the Oscars. I'm not interested in movies or anything like that, but there's an interesting poll that came across here. And how do people really feel about the Oscars? Now, this is a poll that was done in the United States, but Canada and the United States are culturally similar. And so, this was a YouGov poll, but found that only 26% of people are somewhat interested in the Oscars. 8% say they are very interested, and 18% are somewhat interested. A whopping 49% of people are not interested in the Oscars at all. Put me in that camp, 49%. 54% of adults think it's inappropriate for Oscar winners to make a political speech during their acceptance speech. That's one of the things that I'm not a big fan of award shows for many reasons, but in the last few years, that is something that really, for me, has been a turnoff. All of these acceptance speeches turn into political speeches. And as for which film they think should win Best Picture, 8% of people say West Side Story, with 17% of those interested in the Oscars saying the same. So, yeah, the Oscars also coming up this weekend. We have to go to the news, and then it is our Friday 4 panel, as we do every Friday here on the Mike Farwell Show. Tyson Hinsberger, Fazia Mazar, and Dorothy McCabe will all be joining us around the virtual roundtable. Coming up in the topics we're going to discuss is Ontario's mask mandate. Mask on or mask off? Are you ready to take the mask off, or are you still wearing it? We're going to talk about this Liberal NDP coalition. How is that going to turn out? The City of Cambridge has pulled its support for the controversial warehouse project in Blair. And more high-rises coming to Kitchener. Up, or do we build out? That's the debate. Friday 4 panel coming up next on the Mike Farwell Show. Producer Paulie filling in on City News 570.
CKGL AM Kitchener.
Broadcasting live from the boardwalk.
Breaking news, traffic, and weather.
When you need to know, keep it on City News 570. region's #1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is City News 570, everywhere.
It is 11 o'clock, cloudy and 2 degrees. Good morning. I'm Paul McPhee with the City News 570 top story. Another milestone in the battle against COVID-19. The cities of Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge today all lifting their pandemic state of emergency declarations. The move comes on the 2-year anniversary. All three enacted the measures and follows provincial guidance based on positive health indicators. The region of Waterloo holding off for now on doing the same to ensure it meets all criteria. City News Time, 11:01, time for traffic and weather. Together on the ones, here's Eva Fragiscatos.
Good morning. On the eastbound 401 and the westbound 401 through the Cambridge area towards Highway 6 north and south, everything is moving quite well. No delays or problems to report. If you're on the eastbound 401 towards Mississauga, you'll find minor delays as you make your way from Winston Churchill all the way through to east of Mississauga Road. Westbound side and eastbound side of 7-8 through New Hamburg, through the Shakespeare and Stratford area, no delays or problems. 7-8 through Kitchener-Waterloo also moving quite well. And eastbound Highway 7 towards Guelph, no collisions and no delays at this time. Looks like Highway 24 and Highway 8 through the Cambridge area also moving well. We have ongoing construction in Kitchener on Victoria Street from Weber Street to Margaret Avenue. That's for utility work. In Cambridge, Dundas Street from Spruce Street to Gore Street, also partially closed off for road work. And in Waterloo, King Street from Central to Necker, completely shut down for road reconstruction. Now with the check on the forecast, here's John Wilson.
I warned you a while ago the last week of March would be quite a bit below normal again, so here we go. It's not bad today, really. 4 degrees with a chance of a shower or fog patch, the last of this big low. Then flurries move in tonight, 0. Brisk northwest lake breeze tomorrow. That means flurries in 3. And then Sunday, a bitter north wind, flurries in -5. And then Monday, -3. There's your below normal. Today's high 4.
And right now inside the City News 570 studio, we have clouds and 2 degrees. A group of students at the University of Waterloo leading the charge on a local rally, fighting against those who stand a profit for adding to the global climate crisis. City's Mark Perry has more on the rally set for an hour from now.
People, not profit. That's the theme of today's rally, which gets underway at noon in Waterloo Town Square, led by fossil-free UW. The goal is to show financiers and other institutions their displeasure toward those who are financing the climate crisis for their own profit. Petra Duff, a coordinating member of FFUW, says we all have a responsibility to do something about climate change, adding it's not only important to be sustainable in our everyday lives, but to ensure governments and institutions are doing the same. Mark Perry, City News.
Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto has welcomed more children from Ukraine after their cancer treatment was interrupted by war. This as a deadly Russian invasion continues, entering a fifth week. City's Irene Precklett joins us with more.
This latest group arrived on Wednesday, and hospital officials say they are settling in. Dr. Gupta says getting them here took a lot of logistical work, with teams in Poland juggling that along with medical complexity and the social impact.
One of the great things that our collaborating partners in Poland and Ukraine have done is really done a great job at trying to assemble medical records and translate medical records and try to ensure that these families come with as much information about their prior histories.
2 other kids and their families arrived earlier this month. The hospital says it has the capacity to treat more. Irene Precklett, City News.
In sports, the Kitchener Rangers head down Highway 7 for a matchup against Guelph tonight. Coverage on City News 570 starts at 7 o'clock. Be the first to know your news your way any time of day. If it's happening in Waterloo region, you'll find out about it on City News 570 and at kitchener.citynews.ca. News next at 11:30. I'm Paul McPhee, City News.
A roundtable discussion of the week's biggest stories
from Waterloo region and around the globe.
The Mike Farwell Show presents the Friday Four Panel.
Welcome back to the Mike Farwell Show here on City News 570 and Rogers TV. I'm sorry, Rogers. I keep forgetting to mention the Rogers TV part. Yes. Producer Paulie filling in, Mike Farwell still feeling a little under the weather. So just as I get I'm getting my feet wet. I'm learning how this talk show thing works. they throw something new at me, which is the Friday 4 panel. So this is going to be a new experience for me, at least hosting it. I've produced it several times. And so that's what we're doing here. Of course, our weekly discussion of the week that was. And joining us this week is Tyson Hinchberger. He's broker of Planet Realty Incorporated. Fazia Mazar, executive director of the Coalition of Muslim Women of KW, and general manager and co-owner of Continental Driving School. And I must add, part-time talk show host. You've heard Fazia a few times on the air here the last few weeks. And Dorothy McCabe, government relations manager and public affairs professional. So let's, how's everybody doing today?
Great. Happy to be here.
Good. All right.
Real good, Polly.
Yeah. It's nice to see the face behind the voice.
I told my grandfather that you were subbing in for Mike, and he said, "You know what? That's not necessarily a bad thing." So I think he's excited to hear you.
Bit of shade
yeah,
for Mike.
Just kind of read between the lines on that one. So our first topic is, of course, I think we all are aware now that the mask mandate in Ontario was lifted this past Monday. And so mask in or mask on or mask off, are you happy to take off the mask, or do you think that we should still be wearing it? Let's start with Dorothy McCabe.
Oh, great. Hi. Yes, fun to be back again. The masking thing, I actually, in my personal view, is that I think it should have been, I would have preferred to see it on longer, like into mid-April at the latest. I still think we know there's lots of people who have chosen not to get vaccinated, and that is their choice. But I think we should still be, public health and our leaders should still be putting a lot of public messaging out about still, there's still that option to get vaccinated to keep these numbers down. There's a new variant. I think it's B1.2 or something like that. It sounds like vitamins now, but it's like the B1 variant that's coming in, and we need to be really wary of it. So I do worry that's going to cause, particularly for the unvaccinated, for young children, for the elderly and immunocompromised. They're still very vulnerable. So, and it's confusing when the chief public health officer says making masks are optional doesn't signal that COVID has disappeared, and that we're at a place to manage the risk. I mean, I just think that's really confusing, and it's just a small thing we can do to keep protecting ourselves and other people. And so I think we should still continue it. And I've been out and about, and I've been wearing it, and I've seen a lot of people wearing it still, so I was happy about that.
Fazia, what do you think about the mask mandate ending?
I'm sort of neutral. I've started to practice to attend social gatherings a little bit of limited number in a better sort of higher ceiling environment without mask. But when I go to retail or any sort of like marketing establishment, I still wear them because I always think about people who are immunocompromised and they are there for their work, and they don't really have that sort of control to say that they want everybody around them to wear the mask. So I sort of respect that. And in that, I'm still wearing it. I'm myself immunocompromised, so I have to think about this as well. So I think I will continue to sort of practice wearing it, not wearing it for quite a long time until things seem to be more settled. But I also think that the decision sort of looks very arbitrary in some ways, that from March, like whatever the date was, 21st, now you don't need to wear masks anymore. And also not only that, without any flexibility. So I understood that some school boards wanted to keep them longer in some communities, and they were denied that opportunity. I would say, please don't do this. COVID does not, or any kind of pandemic, it's not that they know provincial boundaries. Okay, now the whole of Ontario can just take the mask off. The rate of the rate can vary. The infection rate can vary from community to community. Vaccination rates vary from community to community. So I think the local communities should have some sort of a say in some flexibility in based on, there could be some standard set that, okay, if your community has, for example, vaccination rate below this rate, then yes, there is some flexibility. But the local communities should have a little bit more of a say in whether or not their communities are ready to drop the mask completely.
Tyson, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think they do though, right? Like a lot of municipal public health units did decide to end their mandates at the same time. But you're right. I mean, it is somewhat arbitrary, and that's the challenge with this whole thing, right? I mean, Dorothy referenced as well wanting to see them on until mid-April. Well, what's the target then? Like setting a date to me doesn't make as much sense as setting a rate of transmission or an R value and that sort of thing as a target. So, the whole thing has been somewhat arbitrary. I think, like to Fozzie's point, though, it really comes down to good judgment and knowing your surroundings and what you find is an appropriate setting. I mean, for me, if I go into a client's home now and they are comfortable, or perhaps they've had COVID and their vaccinations, and they say, listen, I'm comfortable without you, wearing your mask, then I'm okay with that. And I know that they're not likely to cause me a concern because of the same thing. But if I'm in a congregate setting like the grocery store or something like that, I'm going to wear my mask as well. And I've seen people, some with masks on, some with other, without, and they're kind of playing this game of chicken around the grocery store because some people just really aren't comfortable with it. And I can appreciate that. I mean, that's going to fade as we get back to normalcy. But I think, out of courtesy to other people, you want to make sure that your neighbors and friends and colleagues and other people are just generally as comfortable as you can be within reason, right? So, I think you got to kind of take it piece by piece. And just because the mandate has ended doesn't mean you have to stop using common sense and a little bit of additional caution and care for others.
Yeah, and I would just add, I was saying mid-April. I mean, only because I think we need more time to see what will happen kind of post spring break and post, like, a number of people have kind of gone and they've started to travel more and that, so to just kind of see, like you said, what happens. And I mean, we can see from the wastewater data that it's starting to go up. So yeah. I don't actually have a specific date in mind. I just want a bit more time to look at it. But from the municipal, like local municipalities and public health units, I just think it's really hard for them. I feel really bad for them. And like, I wish provincially they had kept the mandate in place longer, because I think if you start to say, and they've done it on a number of occasions, right? Kind of downloaded the responsibility to local municipalities and regional municipalities and said, well, you do what's right for your community. But that makes it so difficult to enforce, right? And it's like, oh, what's happening in Waterloo Region versus Guelph versus, Perth Wellington, right? And I just think it would have been better for the provincial chief medical officer of health to take that leadership and keep it in place a little bit longer. I get there's a lot of political considerations, which is, unfortunate, but that's the reality, I think. But the enforcement piece is really challenging for municipalities when it's kind of left up, like you kind of decide what you want to do. So I feel for them from that perspective.
Has anybody gone out since Monday? What have your experiences been like? I went out to Fairway Mall on Monday evening, and about 75 to 80% of people were still wearing masks. I wonder if it's a little bit lighter, even now, 4 days later. What have your experiences been like?
I would say 50-50.
50-50, yeah.
I went to Sobeys this morning. Some staff was wearing the mask, some was not. Some were not wearing the mask, and same thing with the people who were there.
And I asked my kids last night, both who go to a secondary school, and they said it's kind of 50-50 with the students and with the teachers. Mm-hmm. So I would have kind of hoped that to be a little bit higher, but especially with the teachers, but so be it, that's their choice. And I one of the places I had to go this week was to my physio, and they're very clear. I mean, they're a healthcare service, so they're insisting that everybody wears a mask. So there's still some of those places, but I popped out to a number of, takeout restaurants and that. And most of the staff that I saw were, I'd say, upwards of 80 to 90%. And of the people inside were masked. So I was happy to see that.
Tyson, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's a comfort level too in those really tight settings. Like every time I go by a Tim Hortons and grab a coffee, it seems like all the staff inside are all wearing masks, but they're all jostling right around one another. But when I've been out to other retail establishments, it has been, like I said, close to what these guys are saying, 50-50. The trouble is, I find that there's an element of discomfort just because I've seen some people give other people looks for not wearing and for not wearing a mask, and I think that's going to be a bit of a a hiccup or a challenge just in
Or for wearing a mask too.
What's that, sorry?
You can get looks for wearing a mask too.
That's a good point. True. That's a good point as well.
Yeah.
It's not unique to one side or the other, one group to another, but that it's just a little bit of a leery thing, or that your mask carries with it a whole slew of other preconceptions, and not wearing a mask comes with its share of preconceptions as well. And ultimately, like, everybody's just out buying groceries. Like, that's really all it is. So it's really funny. Like, we're in this little loop period here till we get back to normal. And I certainly don't begrudge anybody, that chooses to wear a mask. I mean, they certainly see it as a safety element and something that they're doing, to look after others. And that's kind of been the MO from day one. So
I would just add, like, I live in Waterloo and pretty close to the universities. And for years before this even happened, like, I would often see a lot of international students, particularly from Asian countries, wearing them. And I would kind of look at them and think, why are they wearing a mask? And thought,
me too.
Whatever. Yeah. But now I think, how smart is that? Right? Right? Like, my kids haven't had colds, I mean, there's just a whole slew of other reasons. Well, maybe not a slew, that might be exaggerating, but there's other reasons to wear them. And I just think, wow, we're sort of catching up to practices in other countries that are, I assume perfectly normal in other countries, whether it's for pollution or just illness prevention or whatever, right? But I find that kind of interesting too, to see around my or my community.
There have been socially. Oh, sorry.
Very quickly, Fazia.
So I'm just saying that we've been socially distanced for about 2 years. So proximity to others, especially those who we don't know, just creates this anxiety in many people. But I think it's going to go away. Like, I'm almost training myself to be back with people and a lot of people. Right? So,
we'll get to hug sometime soon.
That would be cool. You're listening to the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570. Our Friday 4 panel convenes every Friday from 11 till noon. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk about this Liberal NDP. Is it a coalition? Is it not? What does this mean for the next 3 years in Canada? This is the Mike Farwell Show, and for producer Paulie filling in on City News 570 and Rogers TV.
Four people.
Four different opinions.
More with the Friday 4 panel
On the Mike Farwell Show after this.
on City News 570.
Simulcast on Rogers TV, Cable 20.
points of view.
They all come into focus on the Friday 4 panel.
This is the Mike Farwell Show. City News 570.
Simulcast on Rogers TV, Cable 20.
It is the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570. Mike is a little under the weather, so you're stuck with me, producer Polly, for the next 45 minutes. It's our Friday 4 panel. The NDP and the Liberals are the newest tag team in politics. Now, our question is this a partnership going to fare well for the New Democrats, or how do you feel about another 3 years under the Trudeau government? Now, if this stands, we won't go to an election until the next scheduled election, which is in October of 2025. Fazia Zahar, let's start with you. How do you feel about this coalition, if you can even call it that?
I love it. I think I've been on the record on Mike Farwell's show just saying this so many times that coalition governments are so common around the world. Let's not call it coalition government in Canada, but some sort of long-term commitment to working together is very common around the world. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really hurt the parties the way that we tend to think over here. It depends how both of these parties have their strategies set around this coalition government, what messages they're giving out to the public. It doesn't really hurt the parties as we're thinking that maybe the smaller partner in this coalition government might be hurt at the end. I'll tell you one thing. For me, at this point, stability is important because we're not even, we can say that we're coming out of COVID. There've been 2 years of overspending during this pandemic. The economic situation is the budget, especially when we look at the government, the reserves, the debt, everything, it's not there where it should be. We have economic instability sort of knocking on the door as soon as, tomorrow, let's say. We also have a lot of societal instability. We saw such polarized views and we saw people going to Ottawa and lots of people really we have seen a lot of problems. So we also need societal instability at this time. If we can tone down the political rhetoric as much as possible, that would be really, really helpful. So I'm happy for this. I'm happy that hopefully it will bring some stability for the next 3 years. And yes, I can live with Justin Trudeau government for the next 3 years instead of just sort of this sword hanging all the time that what's going to happen in next 3 months or next 6 months.
Tyson, what do you think about this Liberal NDP tag team?
It's a bold choice, I think, by the NDP to align themselves with the Liberals. I think, part of their value to themselves and to their constituents and their party was that they could sort of hold the Liberals to account on each relative issue. And certainly, for the most part, they were going to vote along the same lines anyways. So it was sort of understood that there was a de facto alliance, whether it was, solidified or not, and to what extent, a handshake deal is solidified, we'll see, right? But at the end of the day, I think part of the value of being, an opposition party is that you can vote in favor of the things that you like and vote against the things that you don't until you get what you want. And I feel like they've given up a lot of leverage by signing onto this agreement early, and coalition governments, as Fazia mentioned, we don't know what will happen, obviously, until the chips are settled here on the other side, but they do tend to take a bit of a spanking in subsequent elections, and they've tied their fate to the Liberals, I think, over the next 3 years here. If it goes well, Trudeau gets all the credit. If it goes poorly, it's all the more reason to elect a conservative government. Obviously, there's a few things to be determined there in terms of who the leader of that party is in 2025, and whether we make it there again, knowing that at any time, certainly, the NDP can pull their support. But I'd feel a little bit better about the stability thing if I thought things were in the right place and trending in the right direction. But I certainly don't with the spending that we're seeing and the inflation that we're seeing, and all of the political unrest that we're seeing. So there's a lot of things up in the air right now. I think there is value in focusing on solutions and not playing politics over that time. I just don't know that, and this is maybe a personal thing, but I don't know that I have a lot of faith that the solutions that are going to come from this coalition are going to have the effect that we want them to have.
Dorothy McCabe.
So I just want to start by just correcting the record, because I mean, this is not a coalition government, right? And I know the opposite, like the Conservatives, particularly. Well, I mean, they're the ones on the Conservatives and the PCs are the ones who have not taken the step to work with other parties. So they are the ones desperately trying to label this a coalition. I mean, the fact of the matter is, no, there's never been a coalition government in Canada, like never, despite what other parties say and despite how we've characterized what were minority governments working with other partners like Pearson and others. There has never been there's never been a coalition government in Canada. So I think it's really, really important. And I was arguing this point with my brother, we're on different sides of the political spectrum just a couple of days ago, saying language really matters, right? And we need to be clear. And I wish people like Candice Bergen and some of the leaders and the people running for leadership in the Conservative Party would actually kind of pay a bit more respect to the democratic system and call it what it is, right? Like, this doesn't help us to be throwing out all this misinformation about what's actually happening up there or what's actually happening, right? So I probably feel a little more passionate than maybe most people about calling it correctly. So it is a partnership. I mean, a coalition government means that there would have been NDP members actually put into cabinet. That's a huge difference. And that hasn't happened. And according to both parties, that is not going to happen. So that in and of itself makes this just like a partnership. And
yeah, they're just going to have monthly meetings with cabinet of the other party, but they're not actually in cabinet.
They're not actually at the table discussing so I mean, it is a big difference. It is a big difference. And I mean, those cabinet meetings are confidential and there's a lot that gets discussed there and decisions that are made. But it's important, I think, to be clear about what it is and what it's not, right? And I mean, goodness knows we don't know enough about our own democratic system and civics in this country anyway. So I just really don't like that we're making matters worse. But anyway, to your question, Polly, I think it is risky, like Tyson said, for the NDP, because, as in Christy Clark's government in BC, when there was a coalition with the NDP and the Greens, we kind of never heard about the Greens again, right? It's all NDP. Mm-hmm. But I think there's big risk for the Conservatives too. If they don't, they've got a big opportunity, but they're in the middle of a leadership campaign, and this might knock some people might decide not to run because they were hoping for, they might be prime minister by next year, right? But they also, the risk for the Liberals is that they're kind of drifting a bit too far, maybe to the left, right? And they leave that center open. Mm-hmm. And if the Conservatives kind of readjust what they're doing, I mean, that's where most of Canadian voters are, right? In the center. That's kind of that's why I think the Liberal Party of Ontario's been, or of Canada's been so successful, right? They're middle of the road, and that's where a lot of voters are. So who's going to speak for them? That's where my concern is it what's going to happen to that? Because you don't want this to fracture it to the both sides.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Conservatives...
Sorry, I was going to say we're really late. We can pick this up after if we want. We'll talk during the break, see what we want to do. This is the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570 and Rogers TV.
Four people.
Four different opinions.
More with the Friday Four Panel.
On the Mike Farwell Show after this.
On City News 570.
Simulcast on Rogers TV, Cable 20.
401 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is City News 570 everywhere.
It's cloudy right now. We're sitting at 2 degrees. Good morning. I'm Aaron Anderson with the City News 570 top story. 2 years ago today, sweeping pandemic state of emergency declarations were issued in Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge today. All three rescinded those measures as health indicators continue to trend in the right direction and based on provincial guidance. For the time being, the region of Waterloo will keep its state of emergency in place, saying it will be lifted when it meets all criteria. The University of Waterloo confirming to City News this hour that as of yesterday, 49 people have been terminated for not complying with its vaccination policy. However, a UW spokesperson says the majority were not faculty employees, but they could not elaborate further due to privacy issues. They are noting that it's a small fraction of those visiting campus, as more than 99% of students, faculty, and non-faculty have received 2 doses of vaccine. Wilfrid Laurier University, meantime, says it has not terminated any employees for not abiding its policy. Any workers who were non-compliant were placed on an unpaid leave, and those with active contracts will be invited back to work in person on May 1st when the policy is paused. Ontario is reporting 667 people in hospital with COVID-19 today and 161 in intensive care. That's compared with 661 hospitalizations and 165 ICU admissions yesterday. There are 15 more related deaths confirmed and 2,761 cases, although that's an underestimate due to PCR testing restrictions. In sports, the Rangers are in Guelph tonight taking on the Storm. Broadcast time on City News is 7 o'clock. You can follow City News 570 on Twitter at City News KIT. News next at noon. I'm Aaron Anderson, City News.
Taking a deeper dive into the pressing issues with 4 panelists.
The Friday 4 panel on The Mike Farwell Show.
City News 570.
Simulcast on Rogers TV, Cable 20.
Welcome back to the Mike Farwell Show. The Friday 4 panel convenes, but Mike Farwell not feeling well again today. Hopefully he'll be back on Monday. Producer Paulie filling in. On the Friday 4 panel this week, we have Tyson Hinchberger, broker of Planet Realty Inc., Fazia Mazar, executive director of the Coalition of Muslim Women of KW, and general manager and co-owner of Continental Driving School, and Dorothy McCabe, who is a government relations manager and public affairs professional. Well, from yes to no, Cambridge Council pulls support from the controversial Blair Warehouse project. But is this project the end? Tyson, what do you think?
That's not the end of the project, I don't think, by any means. I think that, we've gone pretty far down that road, and there's going to be a lot of recourse to canceling the project at this point in time. I think the city's really opened themselves up, actually, to a lot of concerns about litigation and things down the road because of having led them so far down the path here, and now, to me, arbitrarily pulling that using the demolition permits and the traffic study, not approving it. At this point in time, I don't think that, that was a concern that was raised. And I think it's more a matter of seeing the pushback and it being a political opportunity for those councillors rather than determining whether or not this is in the best interest of the use of that site. To me, if we can't build infrastructure and we can't build, commercial buildings along transport corridors, what are we doing? I understand that the town of Blair is a nice, quaint town and all this stuff, but we're right adjacent to the 401 here. Basically, it's exactly where you would want to have a warehouse that has minimal impact on traffic through the cities and on other arterial roads and obviously like residential roads or shared small highways. That I just don't understand the opposition to the project other than we like it quiet here. And to be honest, if we're going to be a growing city, we have to understand that comes with costs and to have an impact be mitigated as much as possible by choosing a location like this for a site like this or for a project like this. I mean, I don't know. It seems to me very, very arbitrary and unfortunate that, it's the same as when we get into the next topic about high-rise buildings, and I'll feel the exact same way.
Dorothy McCabe.
Yeah, thanks. I'm pretty much, I think, aligned with what Tyson had to say there. And I mean, I think just the politics of it, the vote recently was 5-4. The vote before that was 4-5 to even get to this point, right? So there's obviously Cambridge Council's pretty split on what to do with this. Although if you go back a few more steps, like the way that this parcel of land, which was supposed to be 14 separate industrial lots, got packaged into 1 million square foot lot, I think it sounds like there was some problematic things that happened at that point. So I don't know if they're going to have the opportunity to go back and undo that, to like put it back to the original, what it was originally zoned for.
Yeah, because there's already construction on the site. I drive by there all the time. There's things happening. Yeah.
Like they're leveling the land and things like that. So, I mean, this is going to be a really tough one and it sounds like they've kicked it down, probably past the October election timeline. But I don't know, like, what do the residents of Cambridge and Blair want with that land? Like Tyson said, it's a good corridor right by the 401. And I don't know, are they going to, like, if I were there, like, are they going to come back and like lobby to have it rezoned? I don't know what their next move is, but it'll be interesting to watch.
Fazia Mazar.
I was just going to say that MZO licensing is, what is it called? MZO zoning is going to stay. It's not going anywhere, right? Like, it's there. So I think I agree with Tyson, especially that there is going back is going to be very difficult, especially when we have already seen the things moving. I see this issue becoming quite a significant election issue in this election year for the city of Cambridge, because it's almost like sounds like the residents of Blair on one side and a lot of people in Cambridge on the other side who can benefit from the jobs, who can benefit from the economic progress and prosperity that will come with a warehouse like that. Yeah, you can have 14 sites there, and 14 sites might not bring that much traffic, but 14 sites might also not provide that many jobs and that much of economic development. But I also wanted to bring our attention to one other thing. You know, what has sort of made me upset throughout this is that, number one, we continue to hear the use of the word village of Blair. Village of Blair. I think it's sort of like, it's deceiving. It's not a village, right? We know that this is the smallest, the richest sort of like residential area in the region, with both median income and average income highest in the region, and also so they have about 445 residents in 145 or so residential buildings. So we're talking about just 3 people like taking up a lot of land on average in that. And they're on the record saying that we don't want this to become another Milton or Mississauga or that sort of stuff. Then bringing in the idea of, we haven't consulted with the indigenous communities. All of this is so hypocritical. I think it's very protectionist, and everything else is more about sort of, what can help us win this argument? They have the privilege to put money and, a lot of other things keep going. And I feel like, especially when it comes to the involvement of the indigenous community, it was very disrespectful. And what's next? I think there should be a land bank camp. I can really get a lot of backlash on that. But I think there should be a land bank camp over there asking the resident, well, this land doesn't really belong to you only.
Interesting point, Fazia. Yeah, I mean, I kind of wondered what
communities in this indigenous communities were never consulted before all of these buildings went up in the village of Blair. It's not a village anymore.
Mm-hmm. And there's actually that was one of the, isn't that the oldest site in our area of indigenous
and
heritage?
I think there are 52 unknown indigenous sites there. That needs
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I think the oldest graveyard in the entire region is in Blair, just outside. I thought I heard that at one point. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's why I'm wondering if they might, like, if that area needs to be rezoned from industrial to, I don't know, Fazia's idea of land back, or I don't know, like commercial residential or something like that, right? Like, I don't know.
Do you think maybe this should be put on hold until after the fall municipal election? Maybe kind of make this a bit of an election de facto referendum issue? What do you think about that?
I feel like that's where we're going, Paulie.
Yeah, I agree.
This is the kind of stalling vote that gives people like Nicholas Ermetta something to run on when they run for re-election. And then not to pick on him, but he's at the forefront of the campaign against this. So to each their own. And I think that's exactly what it'll become. And to an extent, like I understand the value in doing that, but at the same time, you're elected for your term to make decisions in your term, and this is a decision that should be made in their term. It's been dragged out, for the majority of this term, and there's nothing to say that there's any value in waiting till the other side. I mean, you have the opportunity to make that decision now, and if you really don't believe in it, then okay, but realize what you're staking your platform on, come the summer.
Fazia, should we put a delay on this until the election is over?
Sorry, say it again?
Should we put a delay on this until the election is over and make it really an election issue?
No, I agree with Tyson, like be decisive, but also looking at, like, I'm thinking the same thing as Tyson was just saying, that both CTS and this is going to be the major election issues in Cambridge. And it's very, very sad that even for CTS, it's been almost 2 or 3 years that the decision has been pending. It's not a very, it doesn't leave a good legacy for this council.
And Dorothy?
Well, I was just going to say CTS, just consumption treatment site. So people, I think, like you said, councils are elected to make decisions. The thing that I worry about, though, is, I mean, they should decide, but there's so few people that come out and actually vote in a municipal election that I don't know if there's going to be enough if that will be enough to get people out to vote, right? Because the numbers are so low as it is. And I think if I were on that council, I would push to make the decision, and, 3 or 4 months are going to go by before the election day. And the 20% that come out to vote probably may not even, connect the dots by that point, right? I don't know.
It is our Friday 4 panel here on the Mike Farwell Show. Producer Paulie hosting. Today we have Tyson Hinchberger, broker of Planet Realty Inc., Fazia Mazar, executive director of the Coalition of Muslim Women of KW and general manager and co-owner of Continental Driving School, and Dorothy McCabe, a government relations manager. We're going to take a break, and then our final topic on the Friday 4 panel, more high-rises coming to downtown Kitchener. Really going to change the landscape. We'll talk about it next on the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570 and Rogers TV.
4 people.
4 different opinions.
More with the Friday 4 panel
On the Mike Farwell Show after this.
on City News 570.
Simulcast on Rogers TV, Cable 20.
Perspectives are front and center on the Friday 4 panel.
This is the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570. Simulcast on Rogers TV, Cable 20.
Producer Polly in with you on the Friday 4 panel on the Mike Farwell Show on City News 570 and Rogers TV. This week on the Friday 4 panel, Tyson Hinchberger, broker of Planet Realty Incorporated, Fazia Mazar, Executive Director of the Coalition of Muslim Women of KW, and manager and co-owner of a Continental Driving School, and Dorothy McCabe, Government Relations Manager and Public Affairs Professional. Well, the corner of Francis and Charles Street in downtown Kitchener will be home to Waterloo Region's tallest condo tower yet, 44 stories. And to build up or not to build up, that is the question. Let's start with Dorothy. What do you think about this tall 44-story condo tower?
Yeah, that was 44 sounds pretty high. I think there's like downtown around transit-oriented communities. I mean, I think that is the place for this kind of condo or rental building, whatever it's going to be.
It'll be condo, just for the record.
Yeah, it's going to be a condo. Okay. Yeah, I think this is the place where you want those kind of buildings. And I think we're going to see more of them. But I think we need, you need the right kind of housing in the right kind of location. So I think this is the location for something like that, rather than, in Midtown or in the suburbs where it's more, you could do 4 or 5 story, more gentle density and things like that. Bit of the bone that I had to pick with the decision, though, was it does sound like a big number to say that the developer is going to give nearly $900,000 to affordable housing, where what I would like to see, and what I know in some other regions they do, is just dedicate, I don't know what, a certain percentage, 10%, whatever it is, 15%, and they actually put the affordable housing right there, affordable or supportive housing, right? I mean, it's one thing to say, here's $900,000, but that's still years away, right? You got to find land, you got to find a builder, you got to, all that stuff, right, to build another affordable housing unit. This is a fantastic place for market rent, for affordable and supportive housing units. And I think I would have liked to see that rather than this gift of money, right, which will take years to actually come to fruition. So I do have a lot more to say about this kind of stuff, but I'll stop there to let Fozzie and Tyson jump in.
Tyson, what do you think of this tall condo tower?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I'm always a proponent of more condos, right? So it's a little bit biased here. But at the same time, to Dorothy's point, the site is excellent. It's adjacent to Communitech and Google and Bread Up Block and all the things that we're trying to build downtown Kitchener into. So it makes a lot of sense. It's a really tall building. 44 stories is quite a lot. For reference, like the highest building in Guelph is 18 stories. So you're over double that. And the other thing is a lot of the suites are very small. So having seen a bit more of the project, and I think probably my colleagues here, there's a lot of suites in the 500 square foot range. So a lot of 1 bedrooms, and some of the price points are pretty high. So when you talk about affordable housing, it's certainly, as much as the units are small, it's affordable on a price point level, but maybe what you're trying to get into that building by way of it's not going to be a family building or anything like that. It's more for the professional that lives and works downtown, or the young professional that's looking to get their first place, and you're still going to probably be around that 500,000 price point or so. But that's the market. I mean, it's not something that the developer sets or controls, and more units in the marketplace does have an adverse effect on prices. Just generally, I mean, it takes a while to trickle through, but as you add supply to the marketplace, prices are going to relatively fall. And so, as long as obviously we're not bringing in more people in lieu, the only comment I'll make too, just on the $875,000. I mean, it's really, that's 2 units or 1.5 units out of 532 that are being donated back. So on principle, I don't believe that a developer should have to give anything back. But my issue with it more is, in lieu of forcing units into the building upon the developer, because I think that does have a detrimental impact on resale, just because of the stigma surrounding those units. And it is what it is. I'm just commenting on it. The $875,000 is relatively paltry from that point of view when you look at the impact that it has relative to the scale of the development.
Fazia, what do you think about this 44-story condo tower?
Everything that Dorothy and Tyson have said already. I was just going to say that $875,000 is like what? Peanuts, right?
Yeah.
It sounds very arbitrary. Like from where this number was pulled, we don't know, right? We don't know. Mm-hmm. So I think I was also going to suggest that the Kitchen City Council and other councils as well can set a percentage of development, either the value of the development, and it's always going to be the same. If you are developing the land for more value, then you pay more, and if you're not, then you pay less. And I remember the downtown economic development tax that was in effect for 10 years. I think until a decade ago, and that helped eventually, right? So we can also have some sort of idea at the council levels where whatever fee these developers are paying, maybe it's already in place that I don't know about, can be dedicated towards affordable housing. But other than that, I think that building more units, it's really great. We already see some very early sign of stability in housing market. Like I'll tell you anecdotally, there was a house that was on sale about 6 weeks ago across the street for me. It was sold in 2 days. I hardly saw the sign and for sale, and it was gone already for $1.4 million. And then now I see another house on market, just the parallel street to my street, and it's been there for at least 15 days and it's still there for sale. So we're seeing some initial signs, and then the more units in the market, the better it is. Even if investors are buying them, it will make more properties available for rent, for example. Lots of good things to happen. We have to have more supply in the market so that the demand can go down, and this will help people who are buying the property right now because of FOMO. FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
So I think it's all in all good. And look at the environmental side. They're providing, I think, 19 electrical units. They're providing 100 or so more barrier-free units. Mm-hmm. Lots of good things that are there, and I'm in favor of it.
And I was just to pick up on a bit about, like, municipal councils can do more. To your point about mandating, right? Like they can say, we want this community, that whatever it is being built, whether it's these 44 stories or out at a new suburb, going to say, we need south-facing roofs. We need these homes built with secondary entrances, so secondary suites can be built. Like we want green initiatives put in, and whatever, right? Like 25% have to use air source heat pumps or geothermal, right? Like, and then to go back to some of the 44, this one here, like we want a certain percentage always has to be affordable or supportive housing. Like these are things that I think our local councils need to do, and need to see that as like they're the ones shaping our communities, and they're the ones talking about what we want in our communities. So, I think it's up to them. The onus is on them to, take the initiative when these projects are coming forward, or put it in your bylaws that this is what, so you're not just pulling numbers out of the air, like 875,000, and it sounds so great, but it's like, put in some dedicated targets, and this is what you have to abide by if you want to build in this area.
All right, Tyson, we got 30 seconds. You want
So just talking about the costs of inputs, like the development costs that the city's going to pull is about $7,000 to $8,000 a unit. So it works out to about $4 million that the builder's paying the city just for the right to build each of those units as well. And that cost gets passed along to the buyers. So when you take the $875,000 divided by the number of suites, it's about $1,500 per suite that a buyer is going to be paying. So when you look at it that way, and you look at the housing crisis and people trying to get into their first places, $1,500 is a lot of money. Like that's, some of your closing costs on a unit that are going to the contribution to the affordable housing and stuff like that. But obviously the harder you make it, the more rules you put in place on a developer, the less stuff gets built, and that's obviously what you're trying to avoid. But you're right; it's always a constant balance you're trying to find, and we'll keep battling that out until the end of time. So,
well, this has been the fastest hour in radio that I've ever hosted. This goes fast. So, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Hope you have a good weekend.
Yeah, thanks, Producer Polly.
Thanks,
nice
Polly.
to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Nice to see you both.
Our week
about what they're doing in the community, and we get to experience what actually is trending. I've been really lucky, I think, to meet these inspiring people. It's a show to actually have fun and engage with people. The show is based on fun.
Let people get excited about junk. What?
And inspiration. Watch #Trending with Aaliyah Thursdays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Are you interested in learning TV production? Have you ever wanted your own TV show? There's an opportunity waiting for you at Rogers TV. On Friday, April 8th, visit us on location at the Sleeman Center and find out how you can get involved with Rogers TV. From working on our OHL broadcasts and daily shows to pitching and producing your own show, discover how you can be part of community TV. Details at rogerstv.com.
When it comes to drugs, how much freedom is too much for kids?
Drugs are out there. Will my teen feel free to say no around other kids?
I didn't live drug-free when I was younger. Can I admit that to my kids?
Drugs worry me, but how can I feel free to talk about it with my kids?
Questions about drugs and kids? Drug-Free Kids Canada.
This is Rogers TV.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Brant Life. My name's Dave Carroll. Great to have you here. This is your community portal to talk about all the things that are going on inside Brantford, Brant County, Six Nations, and beyond. We love chatting with interesting people about interesting stuff. That is what this show is all about. We have a great show ahead. Scott is going to be joining us. Scott Gibson is a police officer, going to be chatting about PTSD and a group that he started for PTSD support, but we are going to get it kicked off in quite a way. We're going to get it kicked off with ice cream. We're going to chat about Dairy Queen and some of the things that Dairy Queen's doing in the community. Well, we're going to get Brant Life kicked off today in a way that many good days should be kicked off, talking about ice cream and ice cream related things. This is, Taylor, this is not an awful way to start off a day, right? Like ice cream related talk.
Absolutely.
Taylor Bros joining us. She's the manager of operations for the Dairy Queen on King George Road. And okay, so many people dream of spending their life surrounded by ice cream. And I know that you've probably spent a lot of your life surrounded by ice cream, but what is it like just being around ice cream at all times?
It's very tempting. You have to have a lot of self-control. It was always something that I asked for my birthday every single year growing up. So it is a family business. So my dad is the owner. So when he bought that, to say that I was excited would be an understatement. You never get tired because you can always try different combinations of all the different treats. So yeah.
All right. Moment of truth time. Has there ever been a moment where everything's closed down, all the last cars have gone away, and it's open mouth over the soft serve? Is this?
I wish. I can't give away all our secrets though.
Oh, that's probably fair. That's probably fair. You guys have had a long history of being involved in our community, and you see Dairy Queen everywhere when it comes to sponsorships, and you guys have been consistently generously involved in the community over the years. But one of the things that we want to talk about today is the community shed. Really, really neat idea. Talk a little bit about what the community shed is.
Well, it's a need that we saw come to light, especially during the last couple of years with the pandemic. A lot of local community organizations, including one that we're personally involved with as a family, Rotary, not being able to run their big events. and not being able to get their name out there. And our location at the King George Road store is very prominent. It's one of the busiest intersections in the entire city. And we wanted to provide an opportunity for people to be very visible, as well as like all of our customers that are coming to the store, let them know about really awesome community charities, different groups, different events that are still able to happen, and just support in any way that we can. A lot of the organizations, like I said, weren't able to run any of their events or fundraisers, and this is really a way to make themselves known, provide an opportunity, even at a small scale, to do some fundraising for the community organizations we have.
So what does it look like? It's actually there right on the corner of King George and Fairview, and and so it becomes a place of prominence for the different charities to be able to do whatever they want to in it, type thing.
Yes, so it's a standalone structure. We've moved it a little closer, so you're actually closer to the lines for people that are coming to get their treats, because the King George Road location is a walk-up location. So you're having everybody waiting in line there. I'm sure many of you have seen the lineups that go to the road, especially in the summertime. Yes. But yeah, they can set up their tables there. They can use the inside of the shed, outside of the shed, talk to people while they're waiting in line. We've had a lot of really positive feedback. The biggest one that I think we've had so far was for Orange Shirt Day. We had KT Gas out there selling T-shirts, sweatshirts, and that to promote knowledge and awareness, and as well as raise funds for the Woodland Cultural Center. But we also have really small organizations coming up. Like I know we have a few Girl Guide troops coming out to fundraise. So yeah, like we're really excited to have that opportunity there.
Are they bringing like boxes of cookies? Like, is that the deal? Like, is it gonna? Wow.
Yeah.
Like, so Dairy Queen, Dairy Queen with Girl Guide cookies. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Like, how are you going to make it through that day? That's not going to be easy. Why did you guys do this? I know that we've all had to be creative during the last 2 years, and in so many ways, philanthropically, business wise, just even personally and emotionally. We've all had to find new ways to be able to do the things we care about. Why was this something that you guys wanted to do?
Well, us as a family overall have always been really involved in the community. And we really honestly just missed it. Being able to be involved and interact with people, which I think everybody's felt. And this was kind of the stepping stone for us to be able to do that. The other great thing is we have an amazing piece of property where there is that big visibility, and we had space that wasn't getting used. So we wanted to find a way to continue to be involved in the community, and we have that asset, so we might as well share it with others.
I love it. Now, speaking as a guy that has spent 10 years in a superhero costume trying to get people to think about how to be kind to each other, I know that this takes intention, and I know that people are along different steps on looking to be able to go, how can I be kind inside the community? You guys as a family and a business have a long history of supporting things like McMaster Children's Hospital, and that takes doing and intentionality. Why is that something that's near and dear to your hearts?
I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. I know personally, like just seeing both my parents and my extended family has instilled that from a very young age of being involved. But our family has also received a lot of support from the community as well. Myself, like I was, my family went to Ronald McDonald House when I was born for a little bit. I have a sister that had passed away at this point, but she was taken care of by many children's hospitals surrounding us. That's partly why McMaster is so important to our family. But also as the community as a whole, supporting our family and our businesses. Even though Dairy Queen is a national brand, it's very much recognized and supported within the community as a family owned and run business. So we want to try to give back to the community as much as we can because of how much they do support us, especially during the last few years with the pandemic, continuing to choose us and supporting our business. We wanted to find a way to give back.
It's such a really neat point about Brant County. Even some of the chains that can be faceless in some communities, people who live here know who owns these places because they are a part of the community. And like it's maybe it's unique to Brantford, maybe it's not. I think that it is. Like let's just chat a little bit about Dairy Queen in general and people that have been on Brant Life over these last 2 years. We always like to touch base and go, how have you made it through the pandemic, even business wise? It's there's been when people talk about supporting small business, I often will remind people, don't just support small business, support local business, support business intentionally, right? Because it's not just every little mom and pop shop. You're a real family who have really invested, and people know. How have you guys done and like made it through COVID times?
Well, it was definitely an adjustment at the start. With COVID, I'm sure everybody, whether it's in your own personal life or other local businesses, you just kind of had to roll with the punches and adjust almost on a daily basis. We've been very fortunate with the type of business that we're in and the fact that we did have walk-up locations that we were able to operate throughout the entire pandemic, although we have had to adjust our practices. We haven't had indoor seating or even patio seating for the past 2 years. So we're just starting to look at opening that back up again. We've relied on a lot of delivery opportunities. We've expanded into Skip the Dishes, which is a partner with Dairy Queen. We've been very fortunate to have amazing staff that we've been able to keep on. And we've had a lot of luck finding new staff that we may not have been able to come across previous to the pandemic, just because people were looking to try to keep in the workforce and different opportunities. And we've been very fortunate that way. And again, the community has been great. Continue to support us because obviously Dairy Queen is a favorite of many people when it comes to ice cream. But we do realize how fortunate we are, and that's why we do try to give back to the community and highlight other local businesses that people can support as well.
Really love it. What's some of the feedback that you've gotten from the charities and organizations that have been able to utilize this community shed?
We've had really amazing feedback so far. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, it is a very high traffic location. So people that may not follow our social media feeds to let them know, like, hey, this group is going to be here today. Come on out and support them. They'll be driving by or walking by and see them and have the opportunity there. So they've had a lot of new faces come and speak to them, support them. So they've been very thankful for that. But the biggest thing is having the free and open space to do it, because unfortunately a lot of spaces do charge for even charities to be present there. But we wanted to make sure it was an equal opportunity for everybody involved, and they were really happy about that as well.
All right, one more hard-hitting question before we go. The banana split, like, is this like how many people are going and getting the banana in the middle of it? Like, is it really like is it a swarm of banana? Is it every now and again a banana? Like, where does the banana fit into the ice cream ratio?
For the banana splits?
Yeah. Do people like the banana? A lot of bananas go out of the door.
Oh yeah, especially on our Wednesday deals. We run that all year round, whether it's fall, winter, spring, summer. We have the Time Warp Wednesdays, where we're selling our banana splits and peanut butter parfaits for half off. They're $3.99, and that's a walk-up or drive-through option that a lot of people choose. And when people ask about ice cream, even in the middle of winter, people will line up in the middle of a blizzard for a blizzard. So yeah, we've definitely seen people's love of ice cream that way.
All right, pro banana. I'll go with you. Every time I see the Bluth frozen banana stand in the Arrested Development, I'll think of you. Taylor Bro from Dairy Queen, thanks so much. If people want to take advantage of the community shed, I'm assuming they just get a hold of you, or you can walk up, get a blizzard, and say, "Hey, I'd love to be a part of this."
Yeah, absolutely. We're encouraging anyone that wants to use the shed to reach out to me directly. So it's taylor@dqbrant.ca that they can email me, or
Awesome.
they can leave their information at the store with one of our staff.
Thanks so much for joining us today on Brant Life.
Thank you so much.
Well, we're going from Dairy Queen ice cream and banana splits to a far more serious subject than banana splits with Scott Gibson, who's a police officer. Scott, thanks so much for joining us on Brant Life today.
Thank you very much.
So we want to chat a little bit about a group that you started called Broken Sword. It's a group, and I'll let you to describe it. But it's dealing with PTSD. It's a term that probably 10 years ago we rarely heard as a society, but thankfully we're hearing more and more about it. And it's not a term that almost even has to be explained anymore. But there's so much to it that those who are not in the middle of it don't understand. Why did you start this Broken Sword group?
Well, I was diagnosed with PTSD about 4 years ago, and it was through being a police officer. So I had this idea. It was just back in October, actually. There wasn't many groups out there, but I was partnered up with a group in Oregon called the PTSD Ranch. Chad Boots runs it out there. So I'd help him along. So I started my own up. So we started up PTSD Broken Sword, and the whole premise was, you know what, we could be broken, but we're still able to function and whatnot. So with the PTSD Broken Sword, we also linked up with Blue Tartan Stables up in Thunder Bay, Ontario, that do equine therapy. So with my group on Instagram, I don't use Facebook, it's ptsd.brokensword. That's where we got started. And now we have a website that's www.ptsdbrokensword.com. We're able just to share anecdotal memes. We're able to help people out. And believe it or not, with the Instagram page, we've helped a lot of people out that are suicidal or whatever. And we're not doctors, but, you know, if they're in, let's say, Arizona, I helped a guy out a few months back, just finding him a phone number to call to get some help.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm good. Go.
No, I was just going to say there's so much to dig into here, and it's the world of first responders and emergency services is a world that some are very, very acutely aware of what it feels like, and others that really don't. This is specifically, if I'm not mistaken, for those who work in emergency services and military services. In many ways, there's, correct me if I'm wrong, but those who are in the middle of it have a much higher chance of understanding what it feels like to be in the middle of it than those who have never experienced it.
I do believe that. I mean, even going back to the man in Arizona, he's he's a Marine, but he's not serving now. It was simple. He was having a rough going. It was simple saying to him, have you thought about going for a walk? Now, I could be the same way. I could be in the thick of things and not even think that, but just to suggest that to someone and then go, no, I didn't think that, and then go for a walk. So I'd rather be supported by a peer than a therapist, because again, like you said, the peers know or may know what you're going through, where therapists are trained to understand what PTSD is and what it's not.
Yeah. Our MPP, Will Bauma, has done, as I'm sure you know, lots of work to be able to bring PTSD awareness to the province. What does PTSD awareness, why is it so meaningful, like to be aware of the fact that this is a real serious thing?
I think to start off with PTSD, there's no drugs to treat PTSD, and really the therapy they use is a CPT therapy, but they treat the symptoms of. So you may have PTSD, but you might be heavier on depression or heavier on anxiety, and they treat the symptoms of PTSD. And I think if you start looking at the suicide rates among first responders, and then you start looking at data that suggests maybe up to 85% of first responders suffer from PTSD, but don't get help. And I think a lot of that comes from, historical, and I'm not leaving females out, but talking about myself, you're a male in a field where you need to make decisions. You have to be strong. It's hard for someone to say, you know what, put their hand up and say, yeah, I need help here. And I think that's why I've taken the little time I've had with it to start saying, this is real and we need to help people out. I mean, even in the time we've had the page going, I'd say we've probably helped 5 or 6 people out. And with Blue Tartan Stables, with Laura and Jeff Elvish up in Thunder Bay, Jeff is a sufferer as well, but he got himself a turnaround. He's back to work. And with Chad in Oregon, a sufferer as well, we're able to kind of hop on it. Maybe one week I can't. I just don't feel like doing it. I have someone else to back me up to say, here, I'll get the information for this person in Arizona or this person in England or whatever.
I've got some family members who are police officers in Ontario as well, and I remember early days when they were on the police force. We would have situations like at Christmas. Then they would come, in and around calls and in uniform, and would go, boy, it's experiencing this, experiencing that, and you'd see the kind of deep sighs, the deep, how does one know when they're in the middle of it, where they go from to, I really need help? Where is that line? And how does one know where they're at that point where they go, I really do need some help here?
Well, I think it's all individual. My journey is a lot different than, your journey. And the big thing I always speak about is stigma. It's the stigma about getting help. And I think that is the first barrier of getting help, is saying, look, I need help, because most people won't. Because again, when someone calls 911 and we respond, we can't call 911 for help. We make those decisions, and we're the strong people, or viewed to be strong. So it's individual. And I just urge people to, the stigma is the big deal to get over. And then the second component I've always spoke about is advocate for yourself. If you're not advocating for yourself, you're not going to get help. In this day and age, it's easier to get help, but there's still waiting lists and whatnot. So the stigma is the first thing, and then advocating for yourself.
Somebody gets a hold of you, they go, hey, I do need help. What does help with PTSD look like?
I mean, I would first ask, have you talked to anybody? And a lot of times it's just getting in to see your family doctor, or depending on, if they're working with my service or in emergency services, I know they have EAP. So my next step would say, have you looked at EAP? Because we know that's private as well. And I think the misconception of EAP is your employer knows that you've gone. But we all know with EAP, when you call the provider to get help, you are assigned a number. You don't even know what the number is, but when they bill your service, the service just sees a number. They don't see that it's Scott Gibson or Dave Carroll. They don't see that. So I think that's the stigma is just getting over that speed bump and looking at, am I sleeping properly? Has my mood changed? Am I shorter with my kids? Am I sleeping too much? Has my weight changed? Am I eating too much? Or am I not eating enough? A lot of those things are things that people have to look at.
Scott, what made you take the jump to be able to go, all right, I'm going to put extra time into being able to be an instigator of help? Because it's one thing to be a sufferer. It's one thing to acknowledge it and to see it around. It's another thing to go, yeah, I'm going to spend extra time being a helper. What made you personally make that jump?
Well, first of all, I have time. I'm not at work, so I have time, and a lot of PTSD issues. They want you to do exposure therapy. So this is kind of my exposure therapy, is talking about it. With my PTSD, I had a really good friend here in Brantford, was a principal who committed suicide, and that's what pushed me over the edge. And you know what? Do I still have nightmares? Absolutely. I had them last night. But being able to talk about this on your show or doing the podcast I've done, it gets me talking instead of staying inside my shell, inside my jail in my house. That's it gets you open and more in talking. And the people I deal with are happy that I'm talking to people like you, because it is exposure therapy for me.
That's amazing. I know at Rogers, one of the things we've did for a lot of years, weren't able to do it this year, but on Blue Monday in January, did I think it was like a 12-hour almost open forum where people came and shared all sorts of different mental health struggles. And watching it and even being a part of it myself, it was wonderful and even personally helpful and therapeutic to hear that other people struggle, but the struggle looks different for everybody. And that's one of the things that I'm taking away from your presentation here, is that it does look different for everyone. And that's why telling the story is so helpful, because maybe it'll trigger something in somebody else to go, oh my goodness, I may be suffering here.
Yep, exactly.
Chat a little bit about how people can support. I see that we do clothing donations and sales and stuff to be able to kind of help support people with PTSD. How can people help?
So with the PTSD.Broken Sword was our initiative on Instagram. We're about 2,900 people now since October, and we're all over the world. There's not many countries we're not in. It's quite nice to see that. So we now have a website. It's www.ptsdbrokensword.com, and we are doing hoodies, t-shirts, hats. We're looking at right now, we're designing a challenge coin that we could hand out for people that are having a rough time, to remember that we're there for them. So if you want online, you can order through Shopify, and all the proceeds 1 month go to Blue Tartan Stables up in Thunder Bay. And then the next month, all the proceeds go to PTSD Ranch in Oregon. Now, I've had people ask me why I'm supporting something in Oregon. Few reasons. That's where I got started, and Chad Boots with PTSD Ranch is awesome, and I helped him out. But predominantly with Chad, he deals a lot with, he's a medic, so he's a firefighter and a medic, and he was in the U.S. military. He deals with a lot more U.S. military. When I talked to Laura and Jeff up in Thunder Bay, they're more blue, they're police. So for me to hit a wide range of people, I felt it necessary to do US and Canada.
Awesome.
And I'm happy I made that decision, because the support I'm getting, even from some of the partners in the States, I have connections now in Michigan and Georgia that are helping me push this stuff along. And I find,
awesome,
not knocking us Canadians, but the Americans are more apt to push you along than Canadians are, just based on their patriotic stuff as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Scott. Thanks so much for being here on Brand Life, sharing your story. Check out PTSD Broken Sword on Instagram, and hey, be kind to first responders. They're real people too. This is one of the things I care a lot about. Be kind to first responders. They are real people with real lives. And Scott, your story is inspiring, and I know it'll help many. So thanks so much for telling it and being a part of the show today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much to our guest today on Brant Life. We've just received some sad news at the time of this show being taped. Tracy Bucci has passed away. Tracy Bucci was a regular guest here on Brant Life. She worked tirelessly within the homeless population inside Brantford, and also was a huge part of the Grand River cleanup and a terrific member of the community. And so our thoughts and prayers are with the Bucci family. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you've got an idea for a show topic, why don't you head over to www.rogerstv.com, click on Brant Life, send us a message, and maybe you could be a part of the great show that is Brant Life next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
This program is brought to you by NBA League Pass. More dunks, more slams, more to love, live in HD. NBA League Pass, part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Weekly in-depth coverage of the most local stories in Stratford, Perth, Brantford, Brant, Guelph, Wellington, and the Waterloo region. Hyperlocal stories that matter to you and your community. All this and more on your region this week. All local, all year round. New episodes every Friday at 7 p.m. right here on Rogers TV.
We can be hurt. We can be bruised. We can be broken. Slowed down, confused, and even numbed. But we can't be defeated. We're built on a foundation that's strong. Our mission, unwavering. And together we'll beat as one.
You're watching Rogers TV.